Okay, I think we can get moving here. So welcome everyone. We're very excited to have you. And I'm especially excited because I'm with Vermont hosting the conference, and this is our Vermont session. So this is Vermont Works for Women. They do fantastic work that you'll hear about. So I'm introducing Caelan, Keenan, and Marla Goldstein from Vermont Works for Women, and you can take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. It's great to meet you. We are going to share a PowerPoint, and so I'll put that on in a second. I think just though we'll take a second to introduce ourselves again. So my name is Caelan. I'm the Youth Program Manager at Vermont Works for Women. And like Katie said, and in our name, we're based in Vermont. So I know folks are coming from different parts of the country. It's wonderful to have you all here and share with you and learn from you as well. Marla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes, my name is Marla. I am the Youth Program Coordinator, and Caelan and I make up the Youth Program team.
Wonderful. Okay, so I will share our screen and Katie will help us keep track of the chat. If folks have questions throughout, we'll reserve some time at the end for a question and answer, but if something comes to you, we're not a very large group, so feel free to jump in. And Katie, please, if Marla or I don't see it, just let us jump in too. Let us know. All righty. So let me play this, make sure everything's going good. Okay. So Marla and I are here to talk about a few different things. Mostly is our Rosie's Girls After School and Summer Camp program. And we'll get to that by way of talking a little bit more about the work that Vermont Works for Women does, and kind of the background intention to our work. There's a car alarm going out in the parking lot, so hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. Hopefully it'll end. Okay, so like I said, we'll talk about VWW, which is what we call Vermont Works for Women. Why we focus on girls and middle school and the trades, in particular with our Rosie's Girls program, and some of the kind of tricks or tips in our toolbox that we use for working with that demographic. Vermont Works for Women's mission is to promote economic justice by advancing gender equity and supporting women and youth at every stage of their career journeys. We started in 1987 and have been going pretty strong ever since. And this is a recently updated mission in the last couple of years. VWW does a lot of different things, really, like our mission states throughout the full career journey or timeline of an individual's life. And we believe that starts really early as middle school, if not younger than that. Our focus is on direct service to youth and young adults through to adults, but we also spend quite a bit of time on advocacy work and gender equity trainings to bring about more systemic change. We work with women who are interested in the trades, construction, electrical, plumbing, renewable energy. We work with women who are currently incarcerated and helping them re-enter the community. We work with women in any sector that are just interested in some employment and career services and support. And then Marla and I are focused on our youth development work, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. We also facilitate a series of gender equity workshops for all sorts of different employers and businesses and sectors, as well as for schools and technical centers across the state, and as of recently, sometimes across the nation too. So our youth programs, we are really working towards providing a continuum of experience for girls, really from that middle 5th, 6th grade level through to adulthood, so that someone could presumably, enter our programming in the 6th or 7th grade and continue through with us into adulthood if they'd like. We'll talk about more of these programs in a second. I think the big piece to note here is that all of our programming is focused on career exploration for girls. We're focused on encouraging young people to step outside their comfort zone, to try new things, to take positive risks. And we're really focused on creating environments and cultures, both that we control or that girls are entering into in high school or their tech center or a place of employment, creating environments where they feel confident and safe and empowered to take those risks and try new things. I'll also note too, down in the left here is how we describe the population that we work with. So we've worked in the last year or so to find a way to more accurately define the population that we serve. And so we use this terminology when we talk about girls. We talk about the fact that VWW programs welcome anyone who identifies as a girl, regardless of assignment at birth, including non-binary or gender expansive youth who feel comfortable in a girl-centered space. So we're trying to be transparent about the fact that we really do talk about the girl experience, and we recognize that and want to welcome in anyone who feels comfortable and identifies with that experience, regardless of their assignment at birth. And that a lot of that, the model for that language and thinking came to us via girls leadership. So I just want to note that too. Okay, so a lot of our programs are shown here, and they're all fantastic and full of energy. And I think the images show that. We offer school-based, summer-based, after-school-based programming for middle school and high school age levels. Our middle school programs, most notably our Rosie's Girls, we'll talk about that in a bit, as well as our Career Challenge Days. Career Challenge Days really represent an arm of our programming that's focused on supporting more girls as they enter their career and tech ed centers across the state. I know every state is set up a little differently when it comes to that, but these are really our technical institutions here in Vermont. They provide high school students with opportunities to gain experience, often even college credit, easy entry into jobs right out of high school in the trades or in STEM-based fields, technical fields. And Career Challenge Day is about bringing actually middle school girls into their local tech center so that they can experience what it's like in that building well ahead of the time that they need to make a decision about whether or not they enroll. And along with that is a lot of gender equity training to help tech centers really evolve in who they cater to and who they feel welcoming towards. At the high school level, we have hosted and facilitated an annual conference called the Women Can Do Conference for high school girls all throughout the state for, gosh, I think over 20 years now. We had our first in-person conference back after the pandemic last year. And this is an opportunity we bring together employers and businesses and women working in those fields who are in STEM or trades fields to come and showcase the work that they do. And then we bring hundreds of high schoolers to interact with those women to try a ton of different things. They learn to, weld, they go up on the fire truck ladder, they learn to use snow plows and different types of heavy machinery too. So it's a pretty awesome day. Our Youth at Work program is a workshop series of personal and professional development content for high schoolers, really working on building affinity spaces for young people. And then our newest program is called LIFT, and that stands for Launching Inclusive Futures in Trades. And that program is designed to be kind of an elevated or older version of our Rosie's Girls program. So it's a hands-on trades exploration program for high school age girls. And our first session will kick off this summer. We're able to make it free for kids to participate, and we're hoping to work with a little bit more of a, an older, mature audience and expand their sense of what's available for them in high school and beyond. So a lot of all of our programs track outcomes. They're probably most aligned with our Rosie's Girls program, but really show up and exist, and we see them at work in all of our youth programming. So we measure confidence, connection, and a sense of expanded possibilities among all the youth that we serve. And these outcomes and measures came to us by way of the Adolescent Girls Resilience Scale. And that is a tool that measures the positive change that participation in experiential-based programming, namely camps or after-school programs, can have for girls in building both their psychological as well as their situational characteristics of resilience. So how can we measure the transformation that happens in a girl in particular when they're put into a really hands-on experiential program that's not only giving them, maybe technical skills or experience, but is also influencing their social and emotional learning and skill set too. So confidence, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Connection is really about supportive relationships amongst anyone in a young person's life. And we touch on, their ability to resolve conflicts as well as their ability to build relationships and communicate with one another. And then the sense of expanded possibilities is really around helping young people broaden their sense of what they can do with their life, whether that's work, education, passion, hobby. We really look for those light bulb moments in showing young people what's available to them. So as we focus on Rosie's Girls in particular for this conversation, we thought that it would be helpful to touch a little bit on some of the major elements of the Rosie's Girls program and how those influence why Rosie's Girls came to be and why it exists. The first, the three are girls, a focus on the trades, and a focus on that middle school demographic. So we'll start with girls first. Even before the pandemic, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, the YRBS, in Vermont, and I'm sure across the country, was showing that middle school and high school girls are struggling in areas of mental, emotional, physical health, body image, and similar factors. The CDC, as I'm sure some of you are aware, recently released the 2021 YRBS data, at least part of it, which captures the pandemic experience as well, or at least the beginning of it. And it also released a 10-year trends report looking at data from 2011 to 2021. And unfortunately, that trend shows that girls in particular, as well as other minority groups, continue to need specialized support as they move through adolescence. So I pulled out just a few startling key data points from that trends report. We see the number of female students who are experiencing persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in the past year. I'll note that when it comes to LGBTQ+, which is how the CDC defined that population, LGBTQ+ students, that number was as high as 70% of students experiencing those feelings of sadness or hopelessness. As far as bullying, electronically bullied experiences, it was 20% in 2021. In 2011, 10 years prior, that number was 22% for female students. So there's been kind of minimal improvement on that marker. And then when it comes to experiences of sexual violence, which is really left for the participant who's taking the survey to define what that means to them. this has been a declining number in the last 10 years for girls. I'm sorry, in increasing number. So it's continued to grow that number. There's also a notable difference here between LGBTQ plus youth and heterosexual students. 22% of LGBTQ plus students experienced sexual violence in the past year. Only 8% of heterosexual students responded in the same way. So, you know, this data I think points to just that specialized support, again, that girls are needing as they move through middle, high school, and into their early 20s. We also have a big focus on the trades, not just within Rosie's girls, but within Vermont Works for Women as a whole. It's part of the origin story, I guess, of Vermont Works for Women. And we today, I think more than ever, see the opportunity that exists, not just for girls, but for adults, women as well. So there's, you know, opportunity for education, career growth, excuse me, sustainability, but at the same time, this really low participation of women and girls in those fields. The data that we have here comes to us from an organization or coalition called Change the Story, based in Vermont, and Marla will put the link to that in the chat. I'll note that a lot of this data is admittedly a little bit old. I think the report we're pulling from is 2016. But when you sort of when you look at the impact that the pandemic has had on female employment in particular in the last couple of years, the data is still pretty relevant. So, excuse me, this slide is showing that leaky pipeline concept that many of you may have heard about. And that is the idea that girls show similar, if not greater, interest and participation in STEM fields and subjects in middle school and high school. But as they get older, as they transition into high school, into post-secondary experiences, that dynamic shifts. So it's not translating into high numbers of women engaged in STEM-based college or career opportunities. This slide is specific to Vermont as well, in that it shows the enrollment in career and technical education programs at a statewide level in Vermont by gender. And so what we're seeing is that the percentage of girls enrolled in what are called non-traditional programs, so programs where one gender exists at less than 25% in that sector. We see those percentages of girls in those non-traditional programs is very low. And these are girls at the 10th, 11th, 12th grade level. As of 2021, Vermont's percentage of non-traditional enrollment, and that includes boys and girls in fields that are non-traditional for their gender, was 11.7% on average. So pretty dismal. There's a lot of room for growth there. When that leaky pipeline, so when the girls, participating less and less in STEM as they age, hits the workforce, that shows up, that what we see there is occupational segregation. This graph on the right shows men in the blue line and women in the purple line. I know it's a little hard to distinguish. So what we see is that the positions in the middle there have the most parity gender-wise. At the top of the chart are fields where men are outnumbering women. And those are, construction, computer-based engineering, et cetera. At the bottom of this chart are where we see women in greater numbers, and a lot of those are healthcare, social service, support positions. And then when this occupational segregation meets differences in wages, that's when we see the gender wage gap happen. And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road on this issue for us, is that what that represents is hundreds of thousands of dollars per individual, per woman, in lost earnings over her lifetime, as a result of the fields that women are most often occupying versus men, and what the differences in wages are between those fields. And today is Equal Pay Day, isn't it? So it's pretty timely to have this conversation. In Vermont, women, the gender wage gap is 84 cents on the dollar that women are making on average to men. And nationally, I believe that's closer to 77 cents. So what we see on the left here is that many STEM and trades positions continue to be high demand, high wage, but have low female participation. And again, we acknowledge, this data on the left is a little bit outdated. But I think just any, listen to the news for a little bit at any day these days, and you hear the demand for, housing, for other infrastructure, and all the workers, skilled tradespeople that come along with those sectors, right? So they remain in high demand. Their wages are really high. There's often low, I shouldn't say low training, but not expensive training. You can often receive that training on the job while you're being paid. You can jumpstart it in your career and tech ed experience. And again, we see women under enrolled in those positions. The chart on the right shows fields where women show up in higher numbers, but aren't necessarily rewarded or valued with the same high wage levels. And again, like I said, that over a lifetime, come time for retirement, can be the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we believe all of that really kicks off at the middle school level. So why do we focus on middle school with Rosie's girls and some of our other programming? Research shows, and we believe, that career exploration has to begin at the middle school level, if not earlier. And that's really to begin to combat the societal norms or stereotypes that adolescents of all genders are facing when they're making choices about school and work, and really even just hobbies or interests and passions at that level. This is a quote from Nancy Deutsch. She's a researcher at the University of Virginia, and she explains middle school as this time of identity development, when we're individuating, is the term I hear a lot, and I think we all remember being in that place, whether we like to remember it or not. But it's also this time when youth are more susceptible to what she calls identity foreclosure, which is when we begin to say no, we take ourselves out of the game, we sideline ourselves, and we start to let other people's perspectives, or even just the implicit messages we're getting from society, affect our decisions. I can think of, several times when that happened to me between middle and high school. And now looking back as an adult, I think, oh, geez, that I would have enjoyed that, if I had stuck with it. And so we really believe in intervening before this starts to happen, so that less and less kids have that identity foreclosure experience. I'll also note too that the Association of Career and Tech Ed has noted this as well, that they've stressed that girls, minorities, and at-risk youth are more likely to limit their career aspirations, especially when their aspirations or their curiosities might be outside of the norm for their gender. So a girl in middle school who begins to show interest in in computer technology or in advanced manufacturing or their auto tech program, and they begin to limit those, their actions or their initiative on those aspirations because of the norms and the stereotypes or cultures that start to creep up in middle school. So the sort of specialized needs of girls that we're seeing in the youth risk behavior data, combined with the opportunity that we see in the trades, I think, just obvious passion and fun that girls have in those fields when we give them the opportunity to, learn to use a chop saw, or learn to weld, or learn to, change a flat tire. When we give them those experiences, we know that they love it. We see it. They tell us that they do. Combined with the timeliness that we see middle school being, the importance of that time in a young person's life, all of that leads us to the kind of the model that is Rosie's Girls. So I will stop talking now and hand it over to Marla to dive in a little bit more to what Rosie's Girls really is all about.
Does anyone have questions before we switch gears to Rosie's Girls? Anything?
Yeah.
Feel free to post in the chat. Just wait a moment. Okay, well, if anyone has questions, feel free to just hop in. So Rosie's Girls, the model of it is a social emotional skill component curriculum paired with this hands-on experience in non-trad fields. And it originally started as a summer camp in about 2000. And just before the pandemic, we started making shifts for it to become an after-school program. And finally, this year, we feel like we really have got it off the ground because staffing was such a barrier due to COVID for that. So it is now a full-fledged summer camp as well as an after-school program. And, oh, Caelan, you're going to have to be the clicker. Thank you. Okay, so this is the things that we have in our toolbox. And fun fact, these toolboxes were actually made by Rosie's Girls campers, which is very cool. So we strive to create a space that is safe, supportive, and non-judgmental. So a pillar of that is respecting other people's opinions, especially when opinions differ. So learning to get along with people that have diverse perspectives. There's a large emphasis on teamwork instead of competition. The culture of camp and after school is one that's very collaborative, supportive. As Caelan said earlier, there's no such thing as failing. So everything that they learn there is just, this is exposing me to things that I might not have had the option to do. They take with them what's useful and they can leave what's not. Positive self-esteem is encouraged. So we allow campers, they don't really have to ask us if they want to use the bathroom, but they're used to doing that for being in school. Even if they don't succeed at something, just the fact that they tried and that they put themselves out there and took a healthy risk and were vulnerable, that's worth celebrating. Healthy body image is a really great conversation that we'll have. So for camp, what we encourage campsites that are not the ones that Caelan and I are facilitating to do is we actually cover up all of the mirrors throughout the week, and we'll put construction paper on them, and we'll have post-it notes and markers in the bathroom. So students or campers can write inspirational or kind things on the mirror without really looking at themselves. Because especially if we're doing a camp that's like welding, your face is greasy and your hair's all messy and you kind of look you look like you've been doing work, and we don't want the campers to be like focused on, oh, I look gross, I look dirty. Like you're at camp, we all kind of look like this while we're here. We focus on complimenting others on their actions and just not focusing on appearance of each other. So the compliments that we'll encourage campers to give is like, wow, your project came out really great. This looks amazing, rather than I like your hair or that shirt is nice. And that's conveyed through a power skill called X-ray vision, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. We also use respectful and inclusive languages. So chosen names for campers. Pronouns are, of course, we don't make anybody share their pronouns, but it's encouraged and optional on our name tags that we give out. And we will openly challenge any language that's racist, sexist, homophobic, or derogatory, or just not positive or puts others down in any way. So other things that we have in our toolbox is, in addition to the language, is inclusive imagery. We have a really awesome set of posters that were made by one of our interns that show women and gender expansive people who are young, who are teens, who are doing great things. We also have these posters that have girls in the trades. There's one I'm thinking of in particular that says "You can do anything," and it's, I believe, a middle school aged girl holding tools. Gender affinity spaces, like we said, are spaces open to anyone who identifies with the girl experience, and it's really important to just have that set group where they're able to just share what each other are going through and support each other. So power skills, like I mentioned, are paired with the hands-on component. So challenge by choice is all about recognizing what your comfort zone, your risk zone, and your terror zone are, and encouraging campers to go from the comfort to the risk zone, but also having that agency to say no if they're crossing into their terror zone. Making mistakes, that's a big thing that we could get embarrassed about, but we all make mistakes. That's the whole point of trying new things. And we talk about healthy relationships too, whether that's dating or friendship relationships. So we have our physical space considerations. So bathrooms are typically, like in the campsites that we've been able to host for Caelan and I, bathrooms are all gender, but like I said, it's girls and gender expansive youth comfortable in a girl-centered space. We have safety gear that fits. So the welding jackets and welding gloves are more able to fit on a middle school girl, which is, you won't find that very often in tech classrooms in high school. Unfortunately, a lot of the girls that are in the programs will have to buy their own gear, or they'll have to make a special order just to get things that fit them. And we also have step stools, so they're able to use the machinery more safely, and they're able to be up on the level that they're supposed to be for their size. And we also just have other women and gender expansive role models. Like I said, that poster series that an intern made has been awesome. And those posters come with us to almost every event that we host. These are some pictures of students building their birdhouses from after school last year, and maybe even some in 2021. So with the pandemic, we shifted to a kit-based model for after school. And those birdhouses are just kits that come from Home Depot, but they're really great at getting the students with hammers or screwdrivers in their hands. They learn how to unbend a nail, how to properly hammer a nail into a piece of wood. There's also a decorative component for them, which is fun, where the students are able to just express themselves through whatever they decide to put on their birdhouse. For camp, we'll have wood burners and paint and markers, and it's always a really nice process to see them go from never having even held a hammer before to having this nice finished product that, whether they use it for actual birds or just home decor, it's fun to take it home. So this is an example of the power skill I mentioned earlier called X-ray vision. And it's just all about seeing the inner qualities that we have. And we frame that by having participants think about somebody who they really admire, particularly a woman or a gender expansive person in their life. And we'll make 2 lists on a poster board of things that they admire about that person in their life. And then we switch gears and hand out beauty magazines or magazines that are marketed to girls. And we ask them to think about what these magazines are telling us to admire. And the lists are always extremely different for the person that they admire versus what the media or the magazines are telling us we should admire. And it opens up this really, really great dialogue just about body image and the male gaze, and how a lot of times girls and women are just operating under this, like how they look and what they do is all just for like men that are typically like perceiving them or looking at them, or men or boys. So it's just a really eye-opening activity. Each group like has a little bit of a different viewpoint of it, depending on how old they are and their own experience with their body image journey. But X-ray vision is a piece of the curriculum that we really, really hope sticks with them beyond after the program ends. And this is, so we measure all of the students in those 3 program areas that Caelan mentioned: the confidence, connection, and expanded sense of possibilities. There is a pre-survey that is given on the first day of camp or the first day of after school. And then there's a post-survey that is the same survey, but the post-survey has some fill in the blanks for feedback, as just so that they could give us some tangible things to make the program better as facilitators. And in 2022, so nearly 70% of campers reported an increased score in confidence. So even if their confidence was lower, it still moved up a little bit in 70% of the campers nearly. 65% had an increased score in connection, and another 69% had an increased sense of expanded possibilities. So it's really great that our program goals are being met by what we are doing throughout the curriculum that we have. And on the right side is just some quotes that we got from the surveys from campers. So we'll open the floor for questions now. So I'll give you all a moment. If you have anything in mind, feel free to either unmute yourself, or you could just post things in the chat.
I think I'll stop sharing too, and we have our contact information. We can put that in the chat as well in case folks have additional questions or just want to touch base in more detail later.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheila with the Ohio After School Network. How would participants either start or get a Rosie's camp in their program? Do you all do train the trainer? Is it like a blueprint? How does a program go about starting a Rosie's girls camp in their neck of the woods?
That's a great question, and there's actually a handful of Rosie's girls happening in the state of Ohio. So we can connect you. Maybe you know about it already. We can be sure to connect you with those organizations. There's sort of a twofold answer for Vermont-based programming in schools versus out-of-state programming in schools. Rosie's Girls is a licensed program, so it's been licensed in several other states throughout the country for several years, Ohio being one of them, California, Rhode Island, several other places. And we can connect with you more about sharing that. Essentially what happens is we enter a licensing agreement, we provide training, and then provide all of the curriculum that goes along with the program. And that's really 2 parts. It's the hands-on project piece for, we have a build camp or after school program, which is carpentry focused, a weld camp, an after school program. And then what Marla was mentioning, sort of a low tech kit based program, and that's called Rosie's Girls Explore. And really any organization, a library could run that. You don't need specialized equipment or training. Okay. So we provide the project piece, and then we also provide the program skills, the power skills curriculum, which is the social and emotional piece. Okay. For programs that are based in the state of Vermont, we provide that train the trainer opportunity and enter into a partnership on almost like a rolling basis. So Marla works with about half a dozen or so schools and organizations during the school year for after school programming. And in those cases, we are training the trainer. So we're providing you with everything you need in order to staff and run your own program. And we have a sliding scale program fee for that. And then for summer camp, we do the same. So we work with schools and organizations, maker spaces, different tech centers to run a week of camp themselves as well. And then Marla and I are staffing Rosie's Girls after school and summer camps throughout the year too, in locations that are a little bit closer to home for us. So Sheila, would be happy to chat if you'd like about, more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, just I would love to know. I didn't know there were any Rosie's Girls programs in Ohio.
Good.
I'm the STEM consultant for the Ohio After School Network.
Okay.
I really would like to know so I can share, and maybe other programs can visit and see how it works, and that might encourage them to look into offering the same.
Okay, wonderful, great. Well, I'll put my email in the chat.
I was gonna say I would drop mine in there too.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Sheila's a co-host for this conference. Yay, Sheila.
Oh, wonderful, great.
Got it.
If you have any questions, feel free to just come off mute, or you can type it in the chat box, either one.
We've got the after lunch choir. Or most people are off camera still eating lunch. So one of the
Understandable.
yeah, but that was great. So, and because we have a few minutes, I always like to share this. I have a granddaughter who just decided that she did not want to pursue a 4-year degree, and she's going into construction. And
Awesome.
so
Wonderful.
I have a she shed, which is what I'm in right now. And she came down and she did all the insulation for me. So it was really cool to see her, with her tools, and she was laying down and putting the insulation in, and just talking with her. She said she really loves working with her hands.
Mhm.
She loves using the tools. And so I'm excited for her because I know what she told us. She says, I don't want to be in debt going to a 4-year college.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, this is what you want to do. Just be the best at it. And she's really enjoying it. So
That's so wonderful to hear. Yeah. And I think too, that conversation about, what comes next after high school, I think just as the conversation around taking some time off for a gap year or whatever is becoming more normalized, so is the conversation around, doesn't have to be a 4-year college degree for everyone. And that doesn't often translate into, the highest paying jobs, let alone some of the student debt that many people are saddled with. That technical trades-based pathway is a really viable one for a lot of people. And the importance of representation and being able to, you can't be what you can't see, right? And so that's a big part of it for us, is just trying to get as many women who are working in those fields in front of young people, just so that they know it's possible. We, Marla and I are not under any illusions that we're creating lots of carpenters and welders. Some of them will go on to really enter those fields. But a lot of them are just having like that one experience that tells them, oh, I thought that was not available to me, and I just proved myself or I proved society wrong, right? Like I took one step to doing something that scared me at the beginning and it doesn't scare me anymore. And what could that translate to in other parts of my life?
Mhm.
So at the young middle school age, that's what we're really about, is like that light bulb moment, right? And then when we move into our adult-based programming, even the high school level, we're focused on, okay, what are the skills you need to achieve what you have decided that you want to achieve? And we get much more practical too. So
Mhm.
that's fantastic, Sheila.
Yeah, she's excited. She actually could graduate this year, but decided, she and my daughter decided she would stay in another year. She's only a junior, but she's a little advanced because she wanted to do something different. So she's in the career center in a construction program. So
Awesome.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Anyone else have questions before we end this session? So if you do have questions, you can contact our lovely hosts here. And I'm so happy being from Vermont to have Vermont Works for Women. So thank you both so much. This was fantastic. All the data, that was like, wow, that was
Right.
surprising to me too. That was great too. So I put in the chat, they have an exhibit booth if you want to go over there and check that out for Vermont Works for Women and look up Rosie's Girls and see all that fun stuff. And then also there's a survey link to fill out the survey at the end of the session. So thank you so much. And this was fantastic.
yay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.